everybody. This is Ryan McClanahan with historythroughcards.com. I hope you're all doing very well today. So, in this video, I'm going to tell you guys about my top six English football players, soccer players of the 1960s. And right off the bat, uh, soccer, football, it's the same thing, but I'm going to continue to call it soccer because that's what I know. If you over in England, it's football, and that's probably the correct term for the sport. Uh, However, it gets a little confusing, especially when you're trying to do business over in England, because I don't think that they call it soccer. For starters, when you're going to say soccer, it'll give you kind of a strange look. Uh, and we have American football here, so I don't want to get the sport confused with American football, the NFL. Uh, anyway, that's just for somebody who is watching this over in England. I mean to say this right here. By the way, this is a 1939 Will's tobacco card of Stanley Matthews, and during the pandemic, I actually kind of was thinking about giving up collecting altogether, particularly because one of my best friend had passed away, and um, it was just very difficult. There was no shows open, and there was really nothing to do. However, I quickly kind of changed my mind. It took a couple of months, and then me being a curious person, I looked over my collection, one thing is, and a lot of collectors will say this, is that if you have a bad day or a hard day or whatever, just want to relax, just a collection can help you out with that. And for me, like, I love talking about collecting cards and seeing what other people have as well, and maybe getting ideas. This hobby is really meant to be shared with other people, and it's just not about the cards. It's about the people that you meet. And I've met some awesome people. I truly have. Even people on YouTube and other platforms. Today I really want to kind of discuss my journey into collecting vintage soccer or football, if you will. And I uh, I was looking over my collection during the pandemic, and I was thinking, this I'm kind of done with baseball. Now I love baseball. I always have, always will. But there's only so much that you can collect, and I have always been someone who kind of like goes down different avenues, either in my writing or in my collecting pursuits. And I wanted to expand further if I could. Now, I had remembered years ago working with a gentleman who I will refer to as Obi-Wan Bill. And when he was in the service, he was stationed overseas in, I believe, I think maybe Scotland or England. And this was back in the 70s and 80s. And he was a career military guy, really great guy, but he was telling me about uh, cricket, and I remembered that. I was like, that seems like something I want to get into. I want to learn more about it. So during the pandemic, I had remembered having these conversations with him about cricket, and I decided to look into it, and I grabbed a bunch of cricket cards, and it was really fun. I mean, it's not a lot of money, first off, and it's a great distraction from the other sports, such as baseball, which can be quite expensive. Now, yeah, your Don Bradman is going to be more on the expensive side. And then I decided during the pandemic again to look into two other sports, which was basketball, which I had actually sold the majority of my basketball collection. I didn't collect basketball when I was a kid. I collected it afterwards to go basically into college to pay off my college tuition. I only kept a few basketball cards, so I went back into collecting basketball from the 1950s, 60s, and especially the 70s. after watching, I think it's Dustin, the sports card dad. He was talking about it, and I decided, that sounds pretty cool. I'll look into that. So that's what I did. And then I uh, I went into soccer, and specifically somebody, I think it was Ryan Nolan, who was talking about Stanley Matthews. And this is a name I did hear about when I was a kid, and I heard from other collectors about Stanley Matthews like years and years ago, and I decided to look up his cards to see if they were affordable. I heard he was a great soccer player, or again, football. So I did pick up a few of his cards, and again, this is the 1939 Wills. Didn't cost me a whole lot of money either, and so I wanted to find out what else was out there because honestly, this is a really beautiful card. The artwork is the first thing that catches your eye, and so after that, I found another set called the 1936 Pilot, and it is a magazine that these cards were issued in. In fact, I think the cards were issued in sheets of four. And the one thing I've actually talked about this in a previous video, kind of showed you guys the preview of the set, and so you guys can go back and look at that video. But the one thing you want to keep in mind with this particular set is that you had to rip the cards off, or just kind of like tear them apart. And so they're going to be in really kind of, I say, trash condition, which is very unusual for British cards to begin with, because uh, the one thing that I have found about collecting British cards or tobacco cards is that they made a ton of these things back in the 1930s, specifically prior to World War II. And you know, the company that print them, the printing company specifically, I think it's Marsden, they were blown up by the Nazis in World War II. I think in 1940 during the Battle of Britain, and then they never really started to print cards again that I'm aware of, but other companies did, and so you have a lot of chewing gum companies and candy companies after World War II, and then I think you have Turf cigarettes, which came out with a lot of cards, specifically actors and soccer cards in 1947, 1948. But throughout the 1950s, you have, I think, A, B, and C, Gum, and Barrett. And I actually wasn't all that familiar with Barrett, except that they had issued cards in the 1970s of like Muhammad Ali and Jack Nicholson and Pele. And so I had actually heard of it, but I didn't know exactly what it was. And I had seen online that uh, Barrett issued candy cigarettes with these cards, and that's why the shape. Now I don't have any Barrett cards. Uh, well, that's not exactly true. I have them, but they haven't arrived yet. They are still across the pond waiting to be shipped over. And if you guys are not familiar with trying to purchase anything over in England, it can be a little bit of a hassle. But for the most part, a lot of these cards are still found overseas, and they really haven't made their way to America. I saw a few actually over in the 2022 National. For the first time, I actually saw cricket cards, and I did see a bunch of vintage soccer. And I was looking over this one dealer, and I just took photos of everything because I wasn't sure what they were. And there was one guy he was telling me about the dealer. His name was Billy Meredith, and I didn't know who Billy Meredith was. No surprise here because I'd never really collected a lot of uh, soccer cards to begin with, but he's supposed to be one of the greatest ever, aside from Stanley Matthews and say again. uh, Dixie Dean here, and this is a 1936. It's a sporting personalities from Gallagher, and they actually did some amazing work too. Uh, Another thing that I found about collecting these kind of cards from Great Britain, the tobacco cards, is that they're found in, for the most part, really, really nice condition. I can't say that about Barrett cards from the 1950s and 60s and 70s. A lot of those cards are not found in really decent condition. For the most part, I think you're going to find Barrett to be really interesting and very beautiful cards for the most part, from especially there's two sets that you guys might like, and one of them is the 1967 Barrett famous footballers set, and it's a set of 50, and they're really nice. The other one is a little more sketchy on the date. I think it's 1966, but I've heard 1963 and 1960 and 1962. Um, that may be the case. I just can't narrow down an exact date of these cards, but they differ greatly, both of these specific sets. And then A, B, and C gum, they mostly have black and white soccer cards or football cards again into the mid to late 1950s. And I'll be talking more about those specific cards in a different video. Like I said, I don't have the cards of the six players that I'm going to talk about today, but from my research, these guys are some of the best soccer players that you will find. And I chose English soccer cards over American soccer cards specifically because America does have a soccer Hall of Fame that I think it opened in 1950, and a lot of the players uh, can go back to the 1910s, 1920s, 30s. But again, they didn't issue soccer cards in America, so it's really kind of like you're not gonna find cards of these guys. So it's your best bet is um, English soccer cards. There are soccer cards obviously in South Central and South America, and there are soccer cards I believe in France too. But soccer is one of the sports that is the most watched, most viewed, most followed. Again, with cricket, but the, the drawback with both of these very, very popular sports is that it doesn't always translate very well to the hobby. And I've found that between soccer and cricket, that cricket is actually a little bit cheaper than soccer, and I think there's just such a huge following in soccer to begin with. Uh, Cricket is the second most watched sport in the world, followed by soccer, obviously. Um, I appreciate soccer. I can't play it very well, even when I was a kid. I was not very good, but I did have some really great teammates. I've mentioned one of them, Osho, before. We grew up together, and he was just a phenomenal soccer player. I always enjoyed watching him play, and I tried to emulate what he did on the field. It didn't work out for me very well. The other kid I used to watch play soccer all the time was another classmate of mine, Frank D, and he was probably the best I had ever seen. And I didn't play with him on the team, but I played against him, and he kicked our ass all the time. So Frank D, thank you very much. I greatly appreciate that. Anyway, today I am going to start off with Bobby Charlton, and I do have some notes here because I'm not going to wing it. That's for sure. And Bobby Charlton, I did see clips of him play uh, quite extensively over the last maybe month or so. And I just want to kind of familiarize myself with his playing style and who he was. And he was born in 1937. He's still alive. He's actually considered something of a national icon in Britain. And he played from 1956 to 1980, and he was a midfielder and forward for Manchester United from 1956 to 1973, and then he played for other various clubs. Now, the one thing that I really kind of uh, got interested in with soccer happened years ago. In fact, there was a movie called Euro Trip from 2004, and the one of the characters in there is Mad Maynard, and he was always talking about Manchester United, and him being a football hooligan, if you will. That's my first foray into soccer outside of the United States, and that character Mad Maynard is actually Vinnie Jones, who is a now a former soccer player himself, a pretty famous guy, very good actor, and I really enjoyed seeing him in this Euro trip. Fun movie too, really fun. I enjoyed it. The other movie that I really enjoyed about soccer, which I know Euro Trip isn't really about soccer, but anyway, um, Green Street Hooligans, which is a 2005 movie, and it stars Elijah Wood, Charlie Hunnam, and Claire Forlani, and I know her from Meet Joe Black, which I thought was a pretty good movie too. Anyway, there's another actor in there, Ross McCall, who I've known from Band of Brothers, which is an awesome TV series. If you guys haven't seen that about World War II, I think it's like what the 101st or the 82nd. I think maybe the 82nd. Anyway, um, and then he's also in White Collar too, which is a great TV series. That that kind of got me to thinking more about soccer, not just as a sport, but as a major business. And in fact, we kind of tend to forget that all of our sports teams are businesses first. You need to have really great talent in order to bring in money. The Manchester United, uh, going back to them, I really want to find out who these guys were, the team itself. And it seems to me it's more like the New York Yankees, really, of soccer. So they were around in 1878 is when they were established, and they have a record 20 league titles, 12 Football Association cups, 5 league cups, a record of 21 community shields. I didn't know what a community shield was, and I had to look this up. And apparently, what it is it's a game in which the receipts were distributed to the 124 clubs that competed in the Football Association Cup. And again, this is really where I needed to take like a quick crash course in English football, um, just to try to figure out what was going on, and then again the positions of the ball players and who the ball players were. And so I watched a couple of documentaries and studied not just the players, but the style of play and what was going on in the field, and the cards as well. Because the one great challenge that I faced was okay, now that I have a name, does this player have a card? And I kind of went into this going blind, really, and then trying to figure everything else out. And for me, that's great. I love to do this. I love the research involved and just kind of digging into it. And that's the one thing about the hobby that you really need to do is to do your homework, do your research, and that way you're going to be better prepared to come across cards. Like there are cards out there that even I haven't seen, and I will take photographs of cards. I will study these things and everything about the card or the manufacturer or the player. And that's one of the fun things about the hobby is that you never know what you're gonna find. And so I'd say over the last maybe month and a half, 2 months or so, I was kind of like digging into English soccer uh, and just having a blast. And I think this is why I um, you guys might enjoy this stuff because it's again it's not baseball, it's not hockey, it's not golf, tennis, whatever. It's a major sport that is not really collected by American collectors, American hobbyists, and I don't see a whole lot of this stuff at shows. Like I said, the 2022 National was the first time. So, getting back to Bobby Charlton, he won the Charity Shield in '65 and '67, and the European Cup in 1967 and 1968. He also won the 1966 World Cup, and that's a very famous World Cup match that I've got to do a lot more research on before I start talking about it. Like I know what I'm saying because I clearly don't know still a lot about this stuff. In any event, the Ballon d'Or or the Golden Ball, he won that as well, and uh, when I was looking that up, I was like, well, what is that? That's kind of strange. What it is French press award it's basically, well, it used to be awarded to just European ball players, but it's since 1995, any soccer player can win the award outside. And so the first player who received the award was Stanley Matthews in 1956. Obviously, it is a recognition for the best all-around soccer player in the game, and so it's I think maybe the equivalent of like an MVP. So Charlton also came in second in the Ballon d'Or uh, in 1967 and 1968 as well. And Lionel Messi has actually the most with seven. And I've never seen Lionel Messi play. I've heard the name, but again, if he's got seven of these things, he's got to be right up there with Stanley Matthews as being one of the greatest soccer players ever, or even Pele. And that's probably taboo to say that he's better than Pele. I've I've heard Pele's name. He's not in. I didn't include him in here because I'm just focusing on one specific league, which is the British league. And Pele has really kind of risen in price extensively, just far greater than anything that I could afford. Maybe someday. I'm not terribly interested in picking up a Pele card, but if I do, I do. There are cards here of these guys that I want to pick up first that maybe I think much more affordable for the average everyday collector. And I consider myself an average everyday collector. Getting back to Bobby Charlton, he also won the 1957 League Cup and he went to four World Cup events in 1958, 62, won in 1966, and again he went in 1970. And he's the Footballer of the Year in 1965 and 1966. He's also named to the 100 Greatest Footballers, which they call the League Legends. I looked over this list, and it was basically a formation of 100 of the greatest British soccer players of the 20th century. Um, and actually, I think it goes back even further than that. But it seems to me that it's really kind of like the Football Researchers Association Hall of the Very Good, and I think this is the equivalent of that. Now there are a lot of Hall of Famers in this. Basically, it's a Hot 100, the greatest 100 soccer players of all time. Some of these guys are not in the Hall of Fame. A lot of them are. In fact, when I looked over the list of the Hall of Famers from the British Football Hall of Fame. That started in 2002, and Bobby Charlton was the inaugural um, inductee, and for good reason. I mean, his resume here is really excellent. I'm not really going to talk too much about uh, other players, but I did look at some of these guys, and Duncan Edwards is someone I'm going to talk about specifically uh, because he ended up getting killed in a plane crash. Bobby Charlton was part of. So in 1958, in fact, it was the Munich air disaster of February 6, 1958, in which 23 of the 44 passengers on this airplane, I think they hit a barn and the plane caught on fire. Bobby actually credits the goalie Harry Gregg with saving his life, and he pulled them out of burning wreckage. And Bobby Charlton was really seriously injured, and it cost, uh, I believe, 8 members of the team their lives, and it was just a horrendous thing. Um, but that's one of the things about being Bobby Charlton, I guess, is that he overcame this and he continued his career. Charlton is also number 12 on the FIFA Player of the Century. I wanted to find out who was regarded as the number one player of the game, and that actually ends up being Pele. If you're going to try to track down a card of Bobby Charlton, some of these can be pretty expensive. The 1967 Barrett Bobby Charlton card has some specific issues with it that you might want to check out, and particularly these cards actually can be found greatly off center, and again, the card itself is a two-tone green, and mostly it's lime green, and the background I have found on a lot of these 1967 Barrett cards have two specific issues. One is that they have print or dot bubbles, uh, and then the streakiness of the background too. It can be very uneven, so that might be something you might want to watch out for. And the other thing, like I mentioned earlier, these cards are not really found in the greatest condition that I've seen, other than the centering issues and the dot and print streaks and all that good stuff. Uh, because the way they were issued, specifically for kids, unlike your tobacco cards that were not issued for kids, though kids did smoke tobacco products in the early 20th century. Now, again, too, is that trying to find these cards is not easy. A lot of them are not found in the United States and they're found overseas. So that again poses another challenge too. Again, I really enjoy the 67 set. Uh, Charlton also is in, I believe, the 1961 Primrose set, a 1961 Kellogg's set as well. And so that's actually a really nice card. He does have a lot of cards out there. So if you don't like any of the cards that I just mentioned, you can look around, and again, prices are all kind of all over the map for a lot of these guys, except for one, and that actually happens to be George Best. And George Best, he was born in 1946 and he passed away in 2005. And he was a winger, and he played for Manchester United, and he's recognized as one of the greatest players ever. I looked up a few of his cards. There was one card I really wanted, but I don't have the starting at 5 grand for his rookie, which is a really nice card. Again, it's a 1964 Barrett, famous footballers. He played from 1963 to 1974 for Manchester, and he retired in 1984. So toward the end of his career, you might be able to get a card or two that is under $50. Um, he does have some cards out there, but I do happen to like Barrett. as a company and their products quite a bit. So I kind of gravitate towards Barrett. And then the other set that I really enjoy is I believe it's the 1966 A, B, and C uh, gum card, and it's really kind of like a well, it's a 1960s design, so it's really kind of pretty cool, I think. George Best was the European Footballer of the Year in 1968, and he came in sixth as Player of the Century. Again, Pele is number one, but a lot of people who saw Best play say he had just an amazing, pure ability to play soccer. From what I've heard, he was kind of a very shy teenager growing up, and he really kind of turned his image into kind of like a rock star, if you will. And there was one quote that he is really kind of famous for, and that he kind of like spent all of his money on uh, booze, rock and roll, and women, pretty much, or drugs, and that kind of cost him his life. Unfortunately, in 2005, he had a liver transplant, and he was taking so many drugs for that. Uh, just rejection medication, and the rejection medication was what killed him. And you guys can read a lot about George Best. Again, he's one of the greatest soccer players ever, and so his value dictates that, and I think it's kind of warranted, even though I think paying $5,000 plus. In one case, I think I saw $17,000 for his rookie. uh, That's pretty insane. I can only imagine what kind of collection that I could grab with 5 grand. Sky's the limit, really, because I'm kind of a cheap ass and I look for deals all the time. But I can't imagine spending $5,000 on really anything, let alone a card. But again, guys, I would never tell you guys, what to spend your money on or how to spend your money. That's not my deal. That's somebody else's. I'm just gonna tell you guys about the ball players, their histories, and other things aside from it, because I think this is really kind of a neat way to get into soccer, not just the game itself, but who the players were. Like I said, his rookie is in the 1964 Barrett famous footballers set. I'm not entirely sure on the dates of some of these Barrett soccer cards, and I've heard like different dates, so it gets a little bit confusing. He is also one of the greatest players never to have played in a World Cup. There are baseball Hall of Famers who have never been in a World Series, and again, the World Cup is every 4 years too, so anything can happen. He's in the Football League's 100 Legends, and he's also the BBC Sportsman of the Year. I want to say that he's kind of like the Mickey Mantle of soccer, in that toward the end of his life, he really kind of had a lot of regrets and kind of, I think, told a lot of people that he could have been better had he stayed away from the booze and the women and the drugs and the rock and roll. I love rock and roll. I don't think I'll ever stay away from that, especially Van Halen. But to each his own. And so he also played under Matt Busby, who is the manager. And I looked up Matt Busby as well, and he's, again, if you want to make the baseball correlation, which I'd try to do, Busby is really kind of like the Casey Stengel of soccer coaches. And he's found in the 1934 DC Thompson set. And DC Thompson is a set that I know of from the 1950s, so I didn't know that they had a 1934 set. And anyway, um, George Best became a member of the Hall of Fame in 2002. And, I almost forgot to mention, he made his debut at 17 years old, and he got into 470 games, 179 goals. And that kind of got me into the English Football League system, is really what I started to look more into, because I didn't know a whole lot about it. I started to have suspicions about the league itself and how it was formed and how it's operated. And I got really interested in this just by doing research on the players. You have a teenager who is signing contracts, which they can go either way, right? Particularly because I remember when I was a teenager, we couldn't sell our cards because the dealers would say that we could be taken advantage of. With the football system, you have the junior circuit. What they call this is the football pyramid, and the first thing I'm thinking of is a pyramid scheme. Now I know it's not a pyramid scheme. It's actually a series of interconnected leagues in different classes or 48 different divisions. You have 140 leagues and 5,300 clubs, and some of these clubs come in and out of the league, and so it can change often. You can also have a player who's traded, just like baseball. In one case, I remember hearing about Dennis Law, who I'm going to talk about next. And Dennis Law actually signed a contract with, I believe it was Italy, and that was a real mistake on his part. He hated the style of the club, and he really kind of, I think, screwed himself over with that. And then he went back to his regular club. So let's talk about Dennis Law. So Dennis Law, or as I heard the name, Dennis the Menace. He is again in the Hall of Fame. He was born in 1940. He played from 1956 to 1974 for Manchester United. Kind of right after the crash in 1958 with Manchester. That club was really never the same afterwards. However, uh, Dennis Law came really kind of like right after that. He came up with a club called Huddersfield Town. I'm not even sure what that is, but Huddersfield, I don't know. Anyway, he played with them from 1956 to 1960, and then played with Manchester United. And he had really kind of like a difficult time with Manchester in the beginning, and that's why he transferred over to another outside club. So as far as goals go, Dennis Law has 237, and it's the third most in Manchester club history, right behind Wayne Rooney. Not sure who Wayne Rooney was. I had to look him up. A pretty good ball player. He also played with Bobby Charlton as well, and he also had a nickname called the Lawman. He's the only Scottish player to have won the Ballon d'Or, and that was in 1964. When he signed a contract with Manchester, it was for 55,000 pounds, and right now the pound is kind of kicking the dollar's ass. So it's again, if you're collecting these cards, the conversion rate is going to get you. You're going to pay a lot more over in Great Britain for these cards. So just again, keep that one in mind. So at the time when he signed with Manchester, that was a record price, and so again, he did this again when he went to play in Torino, Italy, and that contract cost 170,000 pounds in 1961, and he it quickly deteriorated. He went back to play in 1962. I think he maybe lasted maybe 6 months or so. And then there was a particular game in which he played in 1962 against West Brom, where he got a referee to retire because the referee had said basically some insulting words to him. The referee was given basically two choices: you can apologize, or you can retire, or take a suspension. And so the referee retired. Law had said afterwards that it was probably the worst thing that he had ever done. I mean, he always felt that he was a target of referees after that incident. So in 1968, he won the European Cup, and he was also an inaugural member of the Football Hall of Fame in 2002. In 1965 and 1966, I'm sorry, 1967, he won the Charity Shield. He's also in the Scottish Football Hall of Fame. I don't see where if he won the Ballon d'Or, but um, he's a golden player. I wasn't sure what a golden player was, but apparently it's a reference to the most outstanding player of the past 50 years. Again, that's really kind of impressive, I think, because I looked this one up and there aren't too many of these guys around. When I looked up some of his cards, they were actually, uh, for the most part, pretty affordable. My personal favorite was the 1966 Barrett. What I've noticed about that particular card is that there are a lot of print dots associated with that card and centering issues as well. But it is a really nice card. The other player I want to talk about today is Gordon Banks. He was born in 1937 and he passed away in 2019. He was a goalie from 1958 to 1977, and he played mostly for Leicester City and Stoke City, which is the team most associated with Stanley Matthews. Stoke City, I don't believe, won a whole lot of championships. Gordon Banks is regarded as one of the greatest goalkeepers of all time. His rookie card, I believe, is from 1966. So he has 700 games in a 20-year career. So he does have a lot of cards out there for you to choose. Um, again, my personal favorite was his rookie card, and I think you can grab his rookie for about maybe 200 bucks or so, American dollars. That is. When I looked up his personal stats, he actually won the 1966 World Cup, and he played in four cup finals. He actually started every game of the 1966 World Cup, win the 1972 League Cup, and the 1977 Goalie of the Year. And he's also the Football Player of the Year in 1972. So a lot of his accomplishments came after the 1960s, it looks like. He said that there were no teachers for goalies. He had to kind of learn everything on the fly, and he was a reserve for his early part of his career, so he didn't get to play a whole lot of games. What happened was that there was another goalie, Dave McLaren, who was injured in 1960. That was the reason why Gordon Banks was able to come up as a full-time player. But again, it's a very tough position, and Banks ended up really kind of getting injured quite often. So his career was injury plagued, and so there was another really famous injury that he had in I believe 1972, in which he required 300 stitches to his face, and he retired year afterwards, and that was because of a car accident. In fact, not anything that happened on the field. But he also played in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, as well, in a league there. And then he's also the goalkeeper of the year in 1966, 67, 68, 69, 70, and 71, which is six consecutive. That's really impressive. So if you guys ever wanted to consider Gordon Banks in your collection, this is why. And the next player I'm going to talk about is Jimmy Greaves. And so Jimmy Greaves, he was born in 1940 and he passed away in 2021. He played from 1957, and so his playing career ends either in 1971 or 1978 or 1980. I'm not entirely sure because I'm still trying to figure out the pyramid system here. And so he's actually England's fifth highest international goal scorer. He finished with 266 goals with Tottenham Hotspurs. In 1966, Jimmy Greaves scored 31 goals in 47 games for a third place finish, but the team was 4 points behind Manchester. And then after his career, he became a journalist, columnist, and broadcaster. but he's again considered one of the greats of the game. Another player that I really wanted to talk about was Bobby Moore. Bobby Moore is actually talked a lot about in the same circles as Bobby Charlton is. Moore was born in 1941 and he passed away in 1993. He's a defender from 1958 to 1983, and he was the captain for about a decade. And he played for West Ham. Bobby Moore was an incredible soccer player from everything I've heard. He won the 1966 World Cup, and he's known as one of the greatest defenders in the history of the game, according to Pele, which says a lot. And Pele also mentions Bobby Charlton very highly as well. Moore won the Football Association Cup in 1963 and I believe in 1964 as well. He was the Player of the Year in 1961 and the Football Player or Footballer of the Year in 1964. And he was also on the World Team of the 20th Century. He's also the BBC Personality of the Year in 1966, and he was the first person to win that award. Again, I know George Best was also BBC Personality of the Year too, and I kind of forgot to mention that. So that's my quick look into my top six players from the 1960s. Again, so some of these players are really affordable. Some of them are not. I'm going to talk more about a lot of the more affordable soccer Hall of Famers coming up in future videos, and a few individual players as well that I have collected in the past. And so, guys, thank you very much for stopping by. I greatly appreciate it, and I would love to get your comments below to see what you guys think of this list. And then if you're into soccer, let me know if you have any good stories or anything, because I really want to learn more about this stuff, and I want to kind of like share the stuff with you guys. So again, guys, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate it. And until next time, I will talk to you later. Bye.